All right. I'm so excited for this conversation today. My friend Emma is on Soulful IVF. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, especially so
Yeah.
early in the morning for you.
Don't worry. I got my coffee, and this is a really good way to start my morning. You're all the way in the UK, in
I am.
Yorkshire, if I'm not mistaken.
That's right. Yeah, up in the north.
Yeah. So you're the founder of Your IVF Abroad. You're a podcast host as well of Your IVF Abroad. And when you and I connected, I was like, I was learning about your services and I'm like, wow, this is so needed. And I think this conversation is going to help so many people around the world who are considering doing IVF overseas, abroad. And I just admire you for what you've created. And we're going to dive into it today.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. So you and your husband, Adam, if I'm not mistaken, right? You
Yeah.
faced some fertility challenges. And I would love for you to kind of take us back because oftentimes our businesses have been birthed out of our personal struggles. You get it. I get it.
Yeah.
We've navigated through some challenging things. And so I'd love just for you to open up and share a little bit about how long you both were trying to conceive and the path that led you to IVF and
Sure.
beyond. Start
Yeah, sure.
a little bit of
So
an intro.
we started kind of casually trying to conceive around about the same time that we got married.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then it went from kind of casually trying to like really trying, all of
Mm-hmm.
the old wives kind of tips and tricks, and it just wasn't happening. And in the beginning, I was quite relaxed about it. But after kind of maybe a year of intentionally trying, didn't feel quite as relaxed. So went to visit a doctor. They did some tests and they indicated that perhaps there might be some issues on both of our sides.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that our best chances of having a baby would be via IVF, because we were told that we didn't have any chance of conceiving naturally, which was obviously a very difficult thing to hear.
Yeah,
But
I heard
back
that too.
then, sorry.
Oh, I heard that too. It's like a 1% chance. I think it was like, you had male factor, we had male factor, just so much in common through this, as well
Yeah, I
as
know. I
uterine
remember you
polyps.
saying.
Yeah. Share a little bit
Yeah.
about what were those challenges that they told you you had? What were some of those?
Yeah, so, they told me that I was perimenopausal at the age of around 35,
Mhm.
low AMH. Um, my husband had low motility, low sperm count. I think they gave us around about a 3 to 5%
Mhm.
chance.
Mhm.
And here in the UK, we have the NHS, and for some people, they can get state funded treatment, but we didn't qualify due to my BMI, despite losing the weight that they asked me to
Ah,
qualify. Unfortunately, the rules in our area then changed. Um, so we were kind of in the position where if we wanted to have treatment, then we
mhm.
needed to look privately. And I think also I just naively presumed that you just have IVF if you can't get pregnant. And not knowing what IVF was
Yeah,
or how much it
same, right.
costs or how hard it is and all of the things.
Yeah.
Um, so when we began to look into the options privately here in the UK, first of all, what really struck us first and foremost was the cost. Now, I know for you guys in the States, the costs are even
Mm.
higher. Um, so cost was one problem. And
What
we
is an
didn't just have.
average round? You told me once an average round there in the UK. Is it around 10?
So there was some research done by the Fertility Network last year that said that the average round of IVF with ICSI, with everything included, was just under £14,000 here in the UK. Um, it's a lot, and we didn't have any money, to be honest. So we'd moved back in with my parents as
Mhm.
newlyweds, which I understand is a massive privilege, but also not ideal when you just got
Right,
married. Um,
right.
and it was a case of, look, we'll save up for one round, we'll stop going on holiday, we'll stop all the fun stuff,
Mm.
and we'll save up for one round and we'll have it in the UK. But I think because our chances were so low, it just felt like we might as well have set fire to the money. And as well as it being expensive, found it so hard to get transparent costings out of fertility clinics.
Yeah.
Like, so difficult. And it
Yeah.
really annoyed me because I just wanted to understand if I could afford treatment at that clinic. Um, and it felt very cookie cutter. We didn't kind of gel with any clinics that we'd spoken to here in the UK.
Mm, mhm.
So then we were like, well, now what are we going to do? We did look into adoption, but decided that that wasn't the right path for us. And I was desperate to carry and birth a child.
Mhm.
Um, so we were stuck really and didn't know what on earth to do. And I don't know what led us to start looking to go abroad. All I can think is we've done quite a lot of traveling, so we probably got a pop-up advert somewhere in Google, encouraging us to look at, fertility clinics in Europe. So I then went down that rabbit hole and began to have a look. But
Mm,
back then, so um, we're talking what 2015 kind of time.
okay.
Going abroad for fertility treatment was not talked about like it is now.
Mm.
There wasn't Instagram, well, there was Instagram, but there wasn't
Yeah.
communities like we've got now.
Right,
I
right.
didn't know anybody who had done this.
Yeah. I was gonna ask you that. Did you have friends? Did you know people who had gone down this path? No.
No, and it was a terrifying
Um,
thought. That said, I also knew that perhaps, yes, we're good at lots of things in this country. We're good at lots of things in America, but it doesn't mean to say we're always the best at everything. And having traveled a lot, I thought, well, why not somewhere else?
mm,
But yet it was still terrifying, and we were vulnerable and we were desperate. Um, but continued to kind of research and look into it and thought, well, do you know what? Let's have some consultations with some
mhm.
clinics. A lot of them don't charge for a consultation. So I thought, well, there's nothing to lose.
Yeah.
Um, and so we began to research and have some consultations, spoke to 3 clinics, and the experience was just completely different. Like, we felt really listened to, understood. We felt like things were personalized. Communication was great. It's easy to get
Mm,
our questions answered. The prices were so much different. And for the first time in a long time, we thought, actually, do you know what? There's some hope. This is going to give us more goes at IVF
yeah.
should we need them rather
What
than just
countries? I'm sorry to interrupt. What
okay.
countries were you in? What countries did you go to?
So we went to the Czech Republic. We went to a place called Prague in the Czech
Mhm.
Republic, which is a very cost-effective place, a very popular place for people to go and have fertility treatment. Although we didn't really know that back then.
Mm,
Um, so we had a great experience overall, but what I didn't like about it was we were very much flying by the seat of our pants. We were
yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
not really knowing if what we were doing was safe. We didn't know if it was the right clinic for us. And it's coming back to that vulnerability and that desperation. And I desperately Googled for support and help, and it did not
Mm,
exist. Um,
yeah,
but we were in a position where it's like, well, if we go here, we're going to get a lot more goes, and we're liking the clinics that we're talking to. So we chose a clinic and we did it anyway. And I never forget telling my mum what we were going to do and her saying, oh my gosh, don't do it. Don't do that. Like, we'll find a way here. And I was like, Mum,
oh,
we can do it here, but we're going to be able to do it once, and we can't live with you forever.
oh,
And we don't want to continue to put our life on hold and, just
mm,
financially and everything. Once this money's gone, it has gone. But she was scared. She was scared about what if it's not
yeah,
safe, what are you doing, and all of the
yeah,
things that, are completely understandable. And you do need to know what you're doing. Um, the other thing I really liked about the clinics abroad were they were the first ones to say to us that actually they agreed we had a very low chance. They actually felt that our chances were lower than 3 to 5%. And they've all said they felt like it wouldn't work, but that if that was our choice to go ahead and have own egg and sperm treatment, then they would support us. And while that is a hard thing to hear, we massively respected the honesty because we could have
yeah.
just walked away at that point. It was obvious they weren't just trying to take our money. Um, they did suggest double donor conception to us, which is what we chose to have. And
Double donor conception.
double donor conception, so egg and sperm.
Mhm, mm,
And thank goodness we went down that route because after our 3rd transfer, I then became pregnant with twins. Sadly, I lost one of the twins at 10 weeks
mhm.
pregnant. And then now I have a 6-year-old boy.
Mm.
So it was absolutely the right decision for us to
Wow.
go abroad.
Oh my gosh,
And
thank you.
yeah, I think kind of what led us to come to where I am today is needing that help, wanting
Yeah.
that impartial support, and not being able to find it. And so on my maternity leave, my husband said to me, you should set something up. Like, this is an
Mm.
amazing option that people need to know about, but they need impartial support and guidance without bias. You know, I don't take any money from fertility clinics, so I'm always on the side of my clients.
Yeah.
Someone
Yeah.
that's been there and gets it, and to give people that support, because support is so needed. So back in 2019, I set up Your IVF Abroad, and we're just coming up to our 5th birthday, actually.
Congratulations.
Um, Thank you. And I'm so proud and happy that I can use my experiences and now
Mm.
the experiences of helping hundreds of other people around the world in places like America and,
Yeah.
all over the place, for people to start and to grow their families in a way that's right for
Mm.
them. And, it's the best thing ever when somebody that I've helped has their baby or
Yeah.
babies.
You understand this. And gosh, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the courage it must have taken to seek these clinics, in Europe. So did you go to other places other than Czech Republic to have consultations?
No, so I actually had the consultations on video. So a lot of clinics
Oh,
in
okay.
mainland Europe, because they see so many people coming from overseas, you
Mhm.
can go and have an in-person consultation. But what most people do is they have a video consultation,
Mhm.
which obviously works well when you're potentially
Yeah.
going to be traveling a distance without having to commit to go over there,
Yeah.
first.
Yeah.
So that's what we chose to do, and we felt after having 3 consultations, we felt very
Mm.
strongly pulled towards the clinic that we chose.
Gotcha.
And we could have hopped on a plane and gone out to see them first. Some people do that, but we
Mhm.
felt quite confident that it was the right next move for us. So we
Okay.
just we just did it.
And you said you'd had 3 rounds of IVF covered. Was that something from your plan in the UK, or was that something through your clinic?
So we didn't, we had separate rounds. So it took 3 separate rounds. Now, the 3rd round was actually free of charge.
Okay.
So this particular clinic for double donation offered that if
Oh,
you weren't pregnant after 2 double donor transfers, they would then fund the 3rd cycle for you, excluding a medication, flights, and accommodation.
okay.
Um, so we were able to have all of our treatment um, within the budget that we would have had for like 1 round here in
Oh
the
my god.
UK, which
Yeah,
is
cost
incredible.
is
If we'd have stayed in the UK, there would be no baby, or no
mm,
little boy now, because we would have had to stop. So I'm
mm.
so grateful that that was what we chose to do, because it was scary.
Yeah, you and I both share in having our ones. We only had one healthy embryo, and so mine is 6, almost 7. But what a gift. I mean, to
Yeah,
pursue this path, and yes, we're navigating blindly through this. A lot of us, right? We don't know what we don't know, and so I'm just thinking of those who are on this path, and the cost in the U.S. is ridiculous.
ridiculous.
I was a part of in Colorado trying to advocate for coverage, and we do have some partial coverage here in Colorado. But like, in the UK, nothing is, well, you said some parts are covered, but with the NIH, right? Um, you get a little bit covered.
So
NHS,
how it
sorry.
works here so
Yeah.
how it works here is depending on where you live will depend on if and what the NHS may offer you. And it
Okay.
depends on your personal circumstances. And it's
Okay.
different depending on which area of the country that you live in. So it's a very unfair
Oh,
system. But I appreciate that it's more than, you guys get. We're lucky to have a state funded health service, but the reality is it's
yes.
under a lot of pressure.
Mm,
And unfortunately, fertility treatment isn't seen as a disease. You know, infertility isn't seen as a disease necessarily, and it can literally come down to where you live. And there are lots of things there in place to preclude people as well. So it's a hard situation, and you know, it's expensive. Well, it's not as expensive as in the States. It's expensive here too. And I think because we know, don't we, that it's often not just a one-off for people. You know, it's thinking about the cumulative total and having a budget to cover the treatment that you might need past perhaps, you know, one cycle. It's incredibly difficult for people, and incredibly expensive.
What's so unique about what you've created? I feel like, yes, you're all about transparency. Like that is lacking, I feel like,
Yeah.
in industry. Like you said, the pricing, the accessibility, affordability, like you are helping so many individuals to better understand what options are out there to explore.
Yeah, because I'm not sat here saying it's right for everybody to go abroad. It won't be. And I'm also not sat here saying that all fertility clinics are equal and all destinations are safe. They're not. So you've got to know what you are doing. I'm here to help give people that information without any bias, without taking any commission from fertility clinics, so that I'm always on the side of my clients, because I was there.
Yeah.
I know what I wish we'd have had. And so I hope that I've been able to create things at different levels for people at different points in their journey, so that I can support them and give them the information so that they can make the right decisions for them. Because that's important. We're all different, and what suits one isn't right for another.
That's amazing. I was doing some research and looking at some of the, as you've shared about the questions that you are considering and posing as you're exploring these clinics. And I'd love to hear what are some of the top ones that stand out to you. But as I was reading through this list of like who's registered, regulated, ethical, safe, that's one of the ones that you share on your
Yeah,
site. I think that's so important. You've done so much of the heavy work, the research, right? Like to know, helping people
yeah.
save time and like going down the Google rabbit hole.
Yeah,
So
because it's time. Obviously, we've got the ticking clock in the back of our minds all the time. And then
yeah,
it's you know, sometimes we can get so stuck in analysis, you know, paralysis
yes,
analysis,
yes,
going
yeah,
down the Google rabbit holes and trying to work out what's marketing, what's fact, what's opinion.
mm,
And, you know, through kind of my own journey, but then kind of learning how to work out whether a clinic's registered or regulated in a certain country, then collaborating with clinics to sit down with them like this, to ask questions, to really get to understand, you know, do they have specialisms in certain area, you know, going back to thinking about not all fertility clinics are created equal.
yeah,
Because I really believe that you've got to find a clinic that best suits your medical needs,
mm-hmm.
give you the best chance of the right outcome within your budget, and one that also suits your personality in terms of how that clinic liaises with you, so that whatever the outcome, you have the best experience. And that's so important. So, you know, I've been able to sit down with these clinics. I've been out to meet some of them in person, have a look around, you know, to learn and to ask questions that perhaps people don't know to ask or feel scared to ask, to vet whether or not I think these are clinics that are worth recommending to people. But first and foremost, they've got to be safe, registered, ethical places. I feel like that due diligence is part of my job, to make sure that any clients that work with me, you know, as a base level, that they're going to be safe and they're going to be looked after. And then the rest really comes down to what is right for an individual or a couple's needs and
Mm-hmm.
budget. Because again, going to Europe, mainland Europe, you know, the costs vary quite widely in Europe. So, I mean, from America, you would save money anywhere you went, but it still varies, right? And so for some people, this is the difference, if budget's a main factor for them, between how much treatment they may or may not be able to have. You know, and I get lots of people come to me who've had multiple failed cycles, who don't feel like they've been well looked after, who don't feel like they're able to input into their own treatment, that don't feel like things are changing between cycle to cycle. So they keep doing the same things that they've always done with the clinic, and they keep getting the same outcome. And that is for the clinic to be able to they should be supporting people with that. But I think it sometimes comes down to the fact that maybe it's not the right clinic. And that's hard. Like you said, Lisa, you don't know what you don't know. I
Mhm.
didn't know what I didn't know then, but I do now from my own journey, but from helping hundreds of people around the world, I've learned loads and loads of stuff.
Yeah.
And it just shortcuts things for people, and it helps to give people a bit of assurance and control in a journey that can feel very out of control.
Very much. Yeah, it does. It helps give some of that power back to the individual to be
Yeah,
like, and I'm always a believer, we need to be active participants on this path. If we
yeah,
don't feel
exactly.
connected to a clinic, to a doctor, if we don't feel seen, feel heard, it's time to look into something else, make a change.
I completely agree. And, so many of us settle when
Yeah.
things are not right, or, how often I hear about sort of a power imbalance between doctors and patients.
Uh,
Um, and I want my clients to feel really empowered. So when I work with people one to one, they get a list of suggested questions to ask a fertility clinic. And
mm,
that's twofold because I want them to come out of their consultations and to really know it's the right clinic for them, not just because I've said that it might be. Yes,
yeah.
I've done some of that narrowing down and shortlisting for them, but I want them to feel empowered from the get-go with a
Yeah.
clinic that
Yeah.
they are, equal to, and it's not like this, because I think it's so important.
I think it can save people so much money in the long term by seeing someone like you know, like as you said, a shortcut to not have to do all this work on your own. I believe, as a coach myself, it's like having a guide to walk alongside you on this path is invaluable. It's invaluable to add onto your team.
Yeah, 100%. And I think when you've been through something yourself personally, you get it. And like, thinking about donor conception, it is a minefield. It's a minefield in your own country, let alone thinking about doing that
Yeah.
somewhere else. And
Yeah.
I'm constantly researching and learning about it. And, it's really important that if you're going down that route, that you understand the laws in that country, that you understand
Mhm.
how things might work so that if you have a baby through donor conception, that you understand,
Yeah.
any
Always.
decisions that you might have made when you were vulnerable. And I want people to be empowered while
Mhm.
they are on this journey, and knowledgeable. And yes, saving time is obviously a massive part of this for people as well. But just having that support, somebody by your side that gets it and that
Mhm.
is purely impartial, I think that's so important. There are others out there, and I'm not knocking them, but I think if you take commission from a clinic, then you are biased. It's difficult
Yeah.
not to be
Yeah.
biased. Whereas because I made the decision not to do that, I know that any recommendations that I make are always with people's best interests at
Yeah.
heart and, are from the heart.
Same.
Um,
Same.
yeah, because
No
there's
commissions.
no
We're independent. We're independent and we'll
yeah,
recommend what's best, give suggestions, give ideas,
yeah, and they decide.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Real quick, I wanted to ask you what countries have you supported clients in getting fertility support? Has it been, I think you said Greece was one country. What are some of the
Yeah,
countries
so
that come up?
mainly I work with people going to, um, Czech Republic, Greece, um, Portugal, Spain. They're kind of the main hubs. There are other places within Europe, but they're kind of the main ones where
Okay.
I tend to support
Okay.
people. They're very popular destinations that
Yeah.
people go to for
Yeah.
their fertility treatment. And unlike here in the UK and the same in the States, we don't get people flying in from other countries to our countries to have their treatment, right? Not that there's
Hmm.
anything wrong with it, but it's just that it's so expensive.
Yeah.
And, in mainland Europe, they're doing a lot more treatment, day in, day out. They're very innovative with different options for
Hmm.
testing and treatments and for donor conception. And, that's why they've got people flying in from all around the world to go
Yeah.
there to have their fertility treatment.
And a good organization too is the European Fertility Society. I've been a part of that group, and I don't know if you've gotten connected with them very, very much, but there's
Yes.
some great resources there as well. I've
Yeah,
seen.
they're amazing. I was actually a judge for their Fertility Care Awards actually this
Oh,
year, which I know you were part
did we
of.
talk about that? I can't remember. Oh my gosh. But
Yeah,
these
so I
are
was a
what
judge this year. Yeah.
okay. That's so cool. Yeah. They've been really amazing. They've honored, my book and my podcast, and just an incredible organization. Thank you for
Yeah.
going over those countries. I had a client that did IVF in Turkey.
Okay.
Have you worked with Turkey before? Have you done?
No, I
No.
tend to focus on EU countries, and the reason for that is it's very difficult to accurately assess whether a clinic is properly registered and regulated in somewhere like Turkey, because they don't have to conform to EU standards.
Oh,
And EU
interesting.
standards are very similar to the standards that we have here, high standards, say, for example, in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and there's no real proper Ministry of Health in that country. So you
Mm-hmm.
are taking potentially a bit of a blind leap of faith. Now, there will be some great clinics in Turkey. I'm not saying that there won't
Yeah.
be, but it's
Yeah.
just very hard to accurately do your research. And I feel as my job as a mentor and guide is to have been able to do that baseline homework so that people don't have any worries around safety and
Mm-hmm.
ethics and things like that. And unfortunately, I can't do that in a country like Turkey.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Also, in a lot of Turkish clinics, they also offer other things on top of fertility treatment. So they're not necessarily specialists in fertility, but you could go and get your teeth done, you could go and get
Oh,
a nose job,
really?
yeah.
Wow.
And again, I'm not saying everywhere.
Yeah.
Lots
Yeah.
of people go to Turkey and are very happy.
Yeah.
But there isn't that proper regulation in place. So
Mm-hmm.
it's not somewhere that um, I work with, because I feel that my job is to help to protect people. And there are so many other good places. So
Yeah.
there isn't
Yeah.
really, it's not taking something away from somebody. But if somebody wanted to go to Turkey and that was their choice, then of course
Mm-hmm.
they could find their own clinic, and I would work with them to help support them through their treatment journey. That's
Mm-hmm.
of course up to them. But my job, if I'm recommending a clinic to somebody, I need to know that that is safe, well registered,
Yeah.
well regulated,
Yeah.
and to be
Yeah.
able to sleep at night. And I don't ever want to put anybody in a position where they may
Mm-hmm.
be in danger, or perhaps when it
Yeah.
comes to things like donor conception, where things aren't done ethically. That's
Mm-hmm.
important to me. So no, I don't work in Turkey.
Yeah. Okay. Can we talk about the double donor conception and when you learned that that was going to be the path that you were going to be guided on? How did that sit with you when you learned about that?
I know it isn't this straightforward for everybody, and I'm not saying it's always been a linear path, but I think because we knew our chances, with like chances naturally zero. With IVF, own egg and sperm, 3 to 5%. We were not very hopeful at all. Um, we'd begun to think about alternative paths to parenthood. So we looked into adoption. So we were obviously willing to
Mm,
explore other routes. And the main thing that put us off adoption was the fact that I wouldn't be pregnant and birth a
mm,
child, which was something that was important to me. So I
yeah.
think we were already open, but didn't know that was even an option. It's not something we'd heard of before. It's not something the UK
Mm,
clinics mentioned. So I think coming from a place of feeling so hopeless through
mm,
the UK consultations to having the consultations abroad, and yes, being delivered difficult news, but actually we felt hopeful because we'd gone from like 3 to 5% chance, ruling out adoption, no chance naturally, to actually, if you go down this route, you can afford to have 3 rounds. And your chances suddenly shoot up to 65 to 75%. And I was like, wow. And so was my husband. And
mm,
I know it's not an easy decision for everybody, but it was quite an easy yes for us. Um, because we knew that once his money had gone, it had gone. And
mm,
we were just like, what is going to give us the most chance of having a family within the budget that we've got?
mm,
And, based on those odds, I knew with the money that we had that it was
mhm.
probably going to work. Of course, there were no guarantees. And so I think we just felt like finally we've got some hope and a way forward.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to look back with any regrets. And I think because all three clinics felt that donor conception was the way forward for us, even though they weren't pushing it onto us, I
Mhm.
just felt like that's clearly the path for us. And Yeah, when that money was gone, it was gone. So it was what's gonna
Mm,
give us the best chance, and that was it.
mm. Oh, wow. Um, yeah, what a gift. I mean, just being open to different paths to parenthood, you know?
Yeah, and it's, not everybody is, and that's okay too. And some
Mhm,
people really struggle with that decision and the loss of genetics. That's okay as well. And
mhm,
I would not change anything now,
mm,
because to do that would change who our son is.
yeah,
I wish for a less complicated story for him, of course, and I hope that he feels happy with how he came to be. Um, but, you know, I feel comfortable with the decisions that we've
yeah,
made, and without them, you know, I wouldn't be a mum. So,
yeah,
of course, for us, it was a great decision, and I've never once thought he's not ours, because of course he is ours.
yeah, yeah,
And I don't think about it day to day really now. And he knows, he's known from a very young age, in an age appropriate way, that we've had help from a man and a lady, and he understands, from
mm,
a 6-year-old's point of view. I'm not naive to think that there won't be further conversations, maybe challenges in the future, but I kind of also think no matter how you come to have your children, biological or
yeah,
not,
yeah,
there are still going to be challenges, right?
yeah,
So, and you don't know what they're going to be. I kind of think I've spent so much time feeling upset and having infertility control me, that now I'm like, no, I'm taking that back.
yeah,
And this is the decisions that we have made for the best
mhm,
outcome, which we've achieved. And I'm so thankful that it was an option for us.
yeah.
And, really, really pleased that we've now got
Mm.
our little boy.
Oh, I love that you shared openly with him. I was gonna ask you that if you were going to kind of have those conversations with him, and that's personal to everybody. And so you
Yeah.
started talking with him at a young age about that?
Yeah. And I suppose, obviously I've been very open,
Yeah,
out there talking
yeah.
about donor conception, because I don't want it to be something that is shrouded in secrecy,
Yes, yeah.
because the more people that talk about things, the more we break down those stigmas.
Mhm.
And you're right, it's absolutely a personal decision. I know some of my clients choose not to share, but for us, it felt like the right thing. I didn't want to hold this secret. I didn't feel there was a need to do that. Um, and I know from research that it's, really very good it helps in their best interests if you do decide to
Mhm.
share, and from a
Mhm.
young age. Um, so for us, it felt like the right kind of thing. And, there are books and things like that out there to help with this. So you can do it very naturally.
Yeah,
Um, and children are very accepting at, a young
yeah.
age, aren't they? So they don't know any different. And, we've got friends as well now. I'm friends with the same sex female couple,
Mhm.
and their little girl, um, is own egg and donor sperm. So he's not
Mhm.
the only one. I mean, there
Yeah.
will be lots of donor egg babies, or donor egg and
Mhm.
donor sperm babies out there. We just not
Mhm.
don't necessarily know who they all are, but he will not be the only one that he
Yeah.
knows,
Yeah.
which is really nice.
Yeah.
And with epigenetics and things, he is so like us. He
I
really
love
is, and
that.
that's not from
Yeah.
a deluded mother.
Mhm.
He's so
Oh, it's a
like
real
us.
there's real science with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Do you have favorite books? Maybe they're on your website, of lists of resources for parents to have these conversations with their kids?
Yeah, I can send you some links, Lisa, and then you can pop them in the show
Okay.
notes with some
Yeah.
some authors that I recommend for these books,
That would be
because
really great.
I remember like how scared I felt the first time, thinking about the first time I was going to say something, but then actually the situation just came up naturally, and it happened naturally. And the more we talked about it, the easier it became to talk about it. And as I
Mhm.
say, day to day, we don't talk about it much, because this is our family and
Yeah,
this is
it's your
our
life.
norm.
Yeah.
But that first time feels a bit strange, and then it just becomes normal, and you get used to it. And these books I found really, really helpful. So yeah, I can send you those.
That'd be great. Tell me what you were doing for all the listeners. What were you doing before creating this business? What kind
So
of work?
right before creating this business and alongside when I first started this business, I worked for like our social care, children and family service. So working as a support worker with vulnerable families and
Mm,
children, which I did really enjoy. I've always enjoyed roles where I've helped other people.
mhm,
Um, and prior to that, a long time ago, I worked in marketing agencies. But I had a bit of a U-turn and I really wanted to do something that helped people. So I kind of took that passion with my experience to then think,
mm,
right, okay, maybe there are other people out there that need some help with this. And so for the first couple of years of running Your IVF Abroad, I still worked for the Children and Families Service. And then it just got to a point where like it was too much and I had enough, enough
mm,
work to be able to go full time in the business,
yeah,
which I did 3 years ago. And I still can't believe that I'm here nearly 5 years later. It just feels like such a privilege, I think, to be able to take my experiences, the good, the bad, the ugly, and
yeah,
to use that now to help other people helps me, I think, in lots of ways to see that my infertility wasn't in vain.
mhm.
And it's something that the more we talk about, the more it helps people, and that helps me too. And I want to be able to use my experiences to help others.
Isn't that interesting how we look back sometimes at our initial careers and paths and how they often support us in navigating through our personal challenges and then in creating what we are doing to support others, through struggles. And I can speak to that too. It's like being an occupational therapist and going through all this. It's like, yeah, living your life. You talked about living life, not putting life on hold.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, how did you do that for yourself as you were going through treatment? Is that a priority for you? Was that something you just focused on? I'm going to keep living because that's something that was so important to me. I'm not going to give my power over to this path.
Now
Yeah.
I did give my power over,
Okay.
and I that's one of my biggest regrets because it doesn't change the outcome. And actually what it does is it makes you more miserable going through the process. So I wish that I'd have been more like you, Lisa, and looked at actually what I could control. I felt like everything was outside of my control. Well, actually that I now know is not true. And you know, I didn't need to be completely and utterly consumed and miserable for the whole time of which I was. Um, yes, it's difficult. Yes, there are lots of uncontrollables, but I now understand there are lots of things that I could have controlled, like my power to how I responded to things. But I was so in the trenches, and as I said back then, there wasn't people like you out there that I knew of. I was very on my own. Um, I didn't know anybody that ever even had IVF, and a lot
Mm,
of my friends had had children. I just felt so sad and angry and jealous and all of these things. And I just thought I must just be a really horrible person. And
mm,
I thought that was the only person that must have ever felt that way and just presumed I just wasn't very nice. So I felt very stuck. Whereas now I see that there were lots of things that could have been controlled. Either way, it doesn't change the outcome.
yeah. Yeah.
But it could have been a different journey for me and not as miserable. But I think you've got to see other people like yourself who have done it in a different way,
Yeah.
um, to be able to know that that's even a potential option for you.
Thanks for opening up about that. It's not always like the easiest mindset to step into, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it's almost like, what can we take charge of, right? Like, no one can do this work for us. And you and I are both in the mindset of let's let the doctors handle the medical side of this path, right? You and I don't
Yeah.
touch on that area. That's not our
Absolutely not. No.
specialty. I don't want to go into
No.
that area, but it's really the navigating. Like, you have, what does your husband call you? The fairy godmother? I
Yeah,
want to
about
read that
yeah.
quote. I want to read that
Well,
quote.
actually, a client called me as well, but he'd
Oh,
called me
was
before that, and then a
it?
client once called me. Like, he'd called me privately, but then a client said it to me.
Oh,
But yeah, I'm like kind of the practical side of like fertility treatment abroad. You're obviously
yeah.
the mindset and everything. And like,
Mm,
the power of the mind is an amazing thing. And I've done a lot of work on myself since having my son. I got
yeah.
really awful, horrific postnatal depression.
Mm,
And so I had to work on all of this stuff. And
Mm.
so that showed me in lots of ways how I can control my power to, the power I've got is how I choose to respond to things.
Mhm. Aw.
And whether I, let things completely take over or whether I take back some of that control. And that was really, really transformative to me. I felt so poorly and I didn't want to be here at one of my lowest points. And to think where I am now, it, that work was life changing, life saving. Um, and I realize now that I'm not a bad person. What was happening to me was bad. And I didn't know what to do to help myself during that challenging time. And now I've got some skills that I can take with me
Yeah.
from when I had therapy to
Mm.
utilize day to day when things, when life throws other challenges, which it has and which it will do so. But
Mm.
it's been really good work, helpful work for me.
Thank you for sharing about your um, what do I want to say?
Postpartum, I think you call it, don't you? Yeah.
Postpartum depression. Oh gosh. I mean, so many are going through that. And therapy helped you really the most through that, would you say?
100%. I had an amazing therapist. The first therapist I had was not that great, or I didn't feel the gel and connection, which is important. The second one I had was just so good. And
Mhm.
she just gave me the space to air how I felt without judgment and tools,
Mhm.
is importantly tools to help me to move forward so that
Mm.
I could be the best version of myself, so I could be the best mum. And deal with the trauma that is infertility because it is a trauma. And I wish I had support through the process,
Mhm.
practically for the IVF abroad side, but also kind of for the mindset and for looking
Wow.
after myself when you're going through it, because I think sometimes you can be so focused on the end result, you're just going from cycle to cycle to cycle, and you're just putting things away in a box, but actually all of that is going to come spilling out at some
Mhm.
point. So you may as well deal with it in the moment. And I think by doing that, you have a better experience while you're going through it,
Mhm.
irrelevant of the outcome.
I'm just so grateful to know you and I know your services for those who want to explore IVF abroad and have a trusted source. Like that really matters. And you have so many incredible free guides. One is a step-by-step guide to having treatment abroad, right, in Europe, and another
Yeah.
one, 7 things to know when considering egg and sperm donation abroad. So
Yeah,
these are
that's
really
right.
valuable resources that can save you again, as I said, time and hopefully further, save you from heartbreak, more heartbreak, just to get some of these key pieces initially to build that foundation, right? To get a good starting
Yeah.
point.
Yeah, absolutely. To help you to work out whether or not it's going to be right for you, And I mean, I'll send you the links for those, Lisa, and to my
Hmm.
podcast as well for people who are wanting to learn
Yeah.
more. But I think it's important that people have access to
Hmm.
free resources as well as paid
Hmm.
for services.
Yeah, making informed decisions, right? As your husband Adam says, I really wish we had a fairy godmother of fertility treatment to help us make impartial and informed decisions to help us. And there are so many questions you don't even know you're going to have when you set off on this journey, let alone where to get them answered. So you have provided a really invaluable support service for those who are embarking on this path into the unknown that again, I didn't know much about going through IVF. None, even going through like overseas, like that's a whole nother world. That's a
It
whole
is.
nother beast. I can say
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. Yeah,
Right?
quite. And thank you for your kind comments.
Yeah.
I just want to help and reach as many people
Yeah.
as we can.
Yeah.
And like for some of my clients, they've never had IVF before. So, like you
Mhm.
said, that is one big, massive
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
Coupled with them thinking about going abroad, even if you have had fertility treatment before,
Yeah.
these are big things. There's a lot to sort out. There's a lot
Yeah.
to do, and it can just feel so overwhelming, and it can just feel
Yeah.
too much for people. And some people can discount it as an option, even though it might be good for them because they think they have to go it alone. And
Yeah.
you don't have to. There's support out there at different levels for different budgets. There's free stuff, and anything we do for the first time is hard, right? Anything big and important is hard. Like,
Mhm.
starting a new job. At first, you're like, oh my goodness, I don't understand anything. I'm not going to, but you get there. But of course, it's going to be hard because you've not done this before, and having fertility treatment is hard.
Yeah, you support everybody, right? Whether you're solo in a same-sex relationship, if you're coupled, not couple, solo, single, everybody. You help everyone, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The only things we don't help with are surrogacy because
Mm,
that's not something I understand
yeah.
enough about,
Okay.
or adoption abroad. But other than that, yeah, absolutely. And it's important to me that, marginalized groups feel supported and
Hmm.
that they can come to me. I'm effectively asking people to open up and tell me their, really personal information. And it's important that people feel that, I'm inclusive and
Yeah.
supportive and that they feel comfortable to be able to share things that are
Yeah.
deeply traumatic and personal.
Yes. It's hard to imagine a more personal journey than this, right? I mean,
Yeah.
calling in a
Oh,
baby and you're going into your history and loss and like, yeah, it's a
yeah,
deeply,
it's
deeply personal
it's a
path.
lot. Yeah, it is
Mhm.
a lot. And I also feel it's important. I don't know how you feel about this, Lisa, in the States, but if you're in a heterosexual couple, for example, or even if you're not, if you're in a couple, quite
Yeah.
often the partners feel like they're not necessarily included.
Mm.
And if they don't want to be, that's okay. But for lots of couples that I do work with, it's making sure that they feel um, that they're both being included and listened to
Yeah.
because that's important. And for people within like the LGBTQI plus community, that, you know, finding the right clinic for them in the
Mhm.
right destination is even more important. And it's important that they feel safe and seen and looked after, which is how it should be, but it isn't
Yeah.
always, as we know. And
Mhm.
there are some clinics out there better at this than others. And
Mm.
people wanting to go abroad for egg and or sperm donation. Some people want to go down the anonymous route. Some people want to go down the
Mhm.
non-anonymous route. So, there are lots of different options out there for people, and it's got to be right for them. And people don't
Mhm.
want to spend months and years on this. They
Yeah.
want to get
Yeah.
going. Once they've made those decisions, you want to be able to get going and move forwards. Because I think
Yeah.
being stuck in limbo
Mm.
is the worst place to be.
I agree. This is kind of a bit of a shortcut. Like, let's fast track it a little bit as much as some of the things that we can take charge of, right?
Yeah, and just to be able to pick somebody to say to you, right, and the next step's going to be this, and the next step's going to be that, and
Mhm.
why don't you ask your clinic this? And just to have sight of what's going on. A
Yeah.
lot of my one-to-one clients copy me into emails to and from the clinic, so I can see
Ah.
things and I can step in separately and say, hey, it's time now to start thinking about getting your medication. Medication
Mhm.
costs so much money, costs very wildly. Sometimes things aren't available, they've got different names. That can be a whole
Yeah.
big ball game for people that can be completely overwhelming. And just being able to say, it's okay, this is what
Mhm.
your options are. And being, just really helps people to stay calmer and to be able to focus on the important stuff,
Mm.
the going
Which is
through it without the extra stress and hassle, and going into it knowing that it's okay, this is safe, and this is the right clinic for us. Like having that level of confidence,
yeah.
knowing that you've got the money for your treatment, the amount of treatment that you may need, that you want, knowing that you feel listened to and cared for is huge. Hopefully you then get the outcome, but if you don't, you're going to look back and have no regrets, which is so important.
Yeah, it's like, what's the price of your peace? It's priceless, right? Can you put a
Yeah, and
value
and not everybody can afford when they're going through fertility treatment
on
to have my one-to-one support, and I wouldn't have enough
Mhm.
time
Mhm.
to be able to look after everybody. But I've got a course, I've got one-off phone call, video call, and different things at different levels, so that people can have something, or it might be my free stuff, and that's great too. And that gives me a
Yeah.
lot of satisfaction because I don't want people to go into this blindly like we did. Um,
Mhm.
because it is important that you get it right from a safety point of view and an ethics point of view. But also, if you get the right clinic for your needs and budget, you're going to give yourself a better chance of success.
Yes, thank you for touching upon your services. So you do a one-to-one clinic match, the clinic match, and the treatment services, and then the course. And can you touch upon the course briefly again? What your course covers?
Yeah, so this is an instantly accessible, downloadable course that I have live taught twice, so I know that it works, and it
Hmm.
kind of mimics the way that I work one to one, and short video workshops that you can watch or listen to that take you through the process of having fertility treatment abroad and how that works. So, to help you to make up your mind, is this right for us or me or not? Then
Mhm.
it looks at how to find the right destination for you and your needs, how to find a safe, best fit clinic in that destination, and then all the logistics side of things like, okay, we found a clinic. Now we're going to be having treatment. Like, what do we do next? And in
Mhm.
what order and when and how? And then post treatment, depending on the outcome, what happens next. There's
Mhm.
also a link in there, which I'll send you for your show notes as well, to a pharmacist. If people need an introduction to a pharmacist, I'm an affiliate to a pharmacy in Europe. I have lots of American people use it
Awesome.
because you just save so much money, and they can ship to the States. So
Wonderful.
that's in there. And it just gives you everything you need to know. So you can binge watch everything in under 4 hours, or you can just do it, step by
Nice.
step, depending on where you
Yeah.
are up to. And it's a really affordable and accessible way for people to get my knowledge and expertise, but without
Mhm.
having to pay for one-to-one or wait for me if I'm fully booked. They can just literally pay for it. They get instant access. It's all held in a course portal area, and they get
Mhm.
lifetime access for as long as I'm running the course. And I'm not planning
Yeah.
on going
Yeah.
anywhere, hopefully, anytime soon. And it's easy for people.
Yeah.
And it also comes with a guarantee. So if somebody does the course and they still feel that they don't feel confident to be able to do this themselves, then I will knock the price of the course off my one-to-one services, because I'm so confident, having taught it twice and having seen the results, that it will give you everything you need to be able to do this yourself, from doing
Yeah.
the course.
Yeah. So
It's
good.
called the DIY Toolkit course.
DIY toolkit. And if you purchase it, feel free to list, that you heard it here on this podcast.
Yeah, so
um,
Lisa's one of my affiliates. So yeah,
yeah.
please do mention Lisa if you've heard this podcast, and then you do go on to buy the course.
Thank
Um,
you.
but yeah, it's I wanted something accessible for more people. Um,
Mhm.
so I created version 1 a couple of years ago. Live taught it a couple of times
Yeah.
just to make sure it was, worked, to get feedback. And then
Yeah.
this is kind of version 3.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I've had great
Love
feedback
it.
from it, which is lovely
Love
to
it.
hear.
So
Um,
good. Congrats on that.
Thank you.
And so your website, I'll link everything again in the show notes, but for those who want to reach out to you personally and say hello, is Instagram where you hang out the most?
Yeah, so you can come and say hi on Instagram, or I've got a Facebook page. You can say hi on Messenger, or you can go to my website, which is yourivfabroad.co.uk, and you can find out how to contact me via there. But yeah, come say hi.
Love it.
I love it when people do, and I'd love to be able to support more of you over in America and other places where people might be listening
Yeah.
to this. So yeah, come and say hi.
Thank you, Emma. Love all the work you're doing. So incredible.
Thank you, and yours. Thanks so much,
Thank
Lisa.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye.